My name is Bill Thomas. I'm a writer, consulting producer, and now podcaster. I am now trying to use my experience as the brother of a murder victim to help other victims of violent crime. I'm working on a book on the Unsolved Colonial Parkway murders, and I'm the co-administrator of the Colonial Parkway murders Facebook group together with Kristin Dilley.
My name is Kristin Dilley. I'm a writer, a researcher, a teacher, and a victims advocate, as well as the social media manager and co-administrator for the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook page with my partner in crime, Bill Thomas. Welcome to Mind Over Murder. I'm Kristin Dilley.
And I'm Bill Thomas.
And we have a very special treat in store for all of you true crime fans out there. Today, we are presenting the True Crime Holiday Gift Guide.
This is amazing, Kristin. How many holiday gift guides have we done so far on Mind Over Murder?
Well, this is our first holiday gift guide podcast, but I have written true crime holiday gift guides for the last 3 years and put them up on Colonial Parkway Murders. And so I'm really thrilled to be able to bring this to our podcast and actually talk about these really awesome gifts.
We have done podcasts, though, where we recommended books, DVDs, and other forms of entertainment, did we not?
We did. And we actually had someone request the other day, hey, can you guys do another true crime bookshelf? I think it was Erica Brandenburg who asked us about that. And I said, well, it's so funny that you should ask us that. We're about to do the True Crime Holiday Gift Guide. So, Erica, we hope this helps to feed your true crime bookshelf addiction with our True Crime Holiday Gift Guide.
So this is sort of a holiday-themed true crime bookshelf.
Yeah, I think we should definitely look at it that way. Although we will have some non-book items that we could recommend for the true crime lover in your life.
Mm-hmm. I like this already. We thought, let's get a jump on this before the insanity starts. Thanksgiving will be here in a matter of a couple of days. There's Black Friday and all of that stuff. And why not get our recommendations in now? Exactly.
So that once you are done with the turkey and the stuffing and everything else, you can go right on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever else and place your order for these fantastic, we're biased, but I think they're fantastic, true crime books for the holidays.
In case you haven't remembered this, books are one of Kristin's absolute favorite things. Mine too, but no one keeps up with Kristin Dilley when it comes to reading in general, writing, and enjoying the genre that is true crime.
It is true. I currently have 80 books on my to-be-read pile, and I plan on just adding more.
There's kind of no limit when you think about it. And I know the people at your local bookstore really like you.
They do notice that I come in fairly often. I was just looking for Hanukkah gifts from my boyfriend the other day.
Oh, yes. Hanukkah is coming up fast. December 1st, you said?
November 29th, actually.
Wow, very soon.
Yeah.
It'll be here before you know it.
Yeah, so I have to buy for him. And then if I have a friend who's having a birthday or something like that, and I know that they like books, I'll just take them out to dinner and say, let's go to Barnes & Noble and pick out your present. So it just makes it easier.
It does. Should we jump in?
I think we should. So a lot of the books that I have put on this list are, of course, they're kind of biased in favor of what I tend to like and also what tends to be available here in the US. I understand that I'm leaving books from international markets off of here. It's not because I'm trying to be biased toward American true crime. It's just that's what I have experience with. So we do hope that anybody who knows really, really good books from Australia or the UK or Scotland or whatever else, please comment on our social media post. We would love other recommendations beyond ours. In fact, I think the more the merrier.
Absolutely. And by the way, by popular request, we're going to run 2 of our true crime bookshelf episodes as bonus episodes over the next couple of weeks so that you can go back and listen, because books never go out of style. And unless they go out of print, they're still available at your favorite bookstore or online purveyor of books.
That's right. So we'll go ahead and start with the first item on our True Crime Holiday Gift Guide. I've got 10 things, some of which Mr. Thomas will talk about and some of which I will talk about. And the first book is one that I actually just finished, and I picked it up the day that it came out because I was very interested in reading about this case. And it is Little Sister by Lana Wood, who is the younger sister of Natalie Wood. For our younger listeners who may not be familiar with Natalie Wood, she is a super famous actress, wonderful actress, who drowned in 1981 off the coast of Catalina, where she had been yachting with her husband, also famous star Robert Wagner, her co-star Christopher Walken, and their skipper Dennis Davern. And so she was discovered floating just off the coast of Catalina with a nightgown and a red down jacket. Her sister's death had always haunted Lana Wood for, I think, very understandable reasons. And she was particularly skeptical of the coroner's finding of accidental drowning, largely because she knew her sister had a well-publicized fear of drowning in dark water. And she just felt it was very, very unlikely that she would have done anything to put herself in the position to, say, fall off the yacht and drown. When her brother-in-law, Robert Wagner, froze her out after Natalie's death and refused to have any contact with her, she became even more suspicious. So Little Sister is her attempt to come to terms with the death of her very beloved sister, Natalie Wood. This is not a whole biography on Natalie Wood, but you do learn a lot about her. I certainly did. She ultimately does reveal what she thinks happened on the yacht that night. And she even, little extra tidbit, she does spill the beans on the identity of a formidable and powerful leading man who assaulted Natalie early in her career.
Wow.
Yeah, she really does. Although, of course, that made the tabloids. I don't think you'd even have to read the book to search for the answer to that particular.
No, she's not relating what happened to Natalie Wood to that earlier sexual assault.
No, not at all. She's covering early information about Natalie's career and does mention that at the age of fairly young, like late teens, Natalie Wood was assaulted by a formidable, very powerful Hollywood actor.
Very sad.
Yeah. But really, more than anything, I went into Little Sister thinking, okay, we're finally going to learn what actually happened to Natalie Wood. You don't, unfortunately. You learn Lana's theories about what she thinks happened to her sister. What you do learn, though, is that there was a lot of mistakes that were made in the death investigation of this most beloved star. And you see a lot of the struggle that her family has had in getting the answers to what actually happened to Natalie Wood outside Catalina.
Now, one of the things that we discovered when you and I were discussing the book, and I haven't read the book yet, and you have, there's a gap in time between Natalie Wood's death and Lana Wood kind of taking up the mantle to explore her older sister's death.
Yes.
So what's responsible for the gap? It's actually a matter of years.
Lana Wood ended up having a very, I'm going to say, turbulent couple of years in between her sister's death and eventually being able to take up the mantle on the death investigation. She lost her own daughter to drug addiction, and she ended up taking care of her grandkids. She had some financial issues. She actually ended up being blacklisted in Hollywood. She had to stop working as a producer. She thinks that may have been the result of Robert Wagner putting her on a blacklist of sorts. So she ended up just not having the emotional ability to deal with all of that. As you know, it takes up a ton of time and emotional energy to deal with a death investigation, and she just didn't have it available to her.
It sure does. And there's this other curious thing. We saw this in the O.J. Simpson trial and the Robert Blake trial and so many others. And having lived in Los Angeles and worked in film and television, I've always been baffled by this. There's a level of deference, I don't know how else to put this, with Los Angeles-based investigators and prosecutors towards celebrities. I find this very disturbing that someone like Robert Wagner, and I'm not saying that Robert Wagner or Christopher Walken are guilty of murder, and I don't think that Lana Wood says that exactly.
No, she doesn't.
In the book.
Mm-mm.
It feels like these Hollywood stars are not held to the same standards legally or investigatively that the rest of us would be.
No, they really aren't. And it floored me when, all told, Robert Wagner ended up being interviewed in the death investigation of his wife for a grand total of 6 minutes.
How is that even possible?
It really shouldn't be possible, but the LA police officer who was interviewing him stopped the interview after 6 minutes because Mr. Wagner was distraught, and he was never questioned again.
I am so shocked by this.
Yeah.
Look, stopping the interview might have been the right thing to do, but then never bringing him back in, even with a lawyer, and saying, we're going to continue the interview now, whether that was a few weeks or even a few months later. I mean, a woman died under very mysterious circumstances, and Robert Wagner and Christopher Walken and Dennis Davern, if I'm saying that right.
Davern, but I'm not sure.
The skipper, they were all there, and they should have all been interviewed. What happened with Christopher Walken?
He wasn't interviewed for terribly much longer beyond that. And he also has not had a lot to say in the intervening years about what may have happened. He hasn't stonewalled Lana Wood, but he certainly hasn't been terribly helpful either. The one person who did come forward to assist in the investigation was the skipper, Dennis Davern. It was only 10 years after Natalie Wood's mysterious death that he called up Lana Wood and said, I have information, and it's information I've withheld because I was anxious, afraid. I didn't tell the police everything, but now I have to come clean with you because my conscience is telling me I need to.
Wow.
It really is very interesting. And so this is definitely something that I would recommend for anybody who likes a good old-fashioned bit of glitz and glamour and sordid Hollywood storytelling. You do feel quite sad for her family. You don't come away with any bombshells, unfortunately, but she does lay out a pretty plausible explanation of what she thinks happened to her sister. And I think until LAPD can move it forward, this is all we're going to have.
How much you want to bet LAPD won't move it forward?
She gave the current detectives a lot of credit for really, really working the cold case as far as they possibly could. And they did at one point or another give a press conference saying, okay, Robert Wagner is officially a person of interest. He's not a suspect. He's just a person of interest. And she said that was more than what she'd previously hoped for, but she doesn't think it will go beyond there.
Are we clear on who owned the Splendor, the beautiful yacht where this took place? Was that something that Robert Wagner or Christopher Walken owned, or did they book this?
It was not Christopher Walken. I know he didn't own it. I'm honestly not sure. I don't remember getting that information. Maybe I was reading with half an eye at that point. It is still around. Like, it was in dry dock for years and years and years and years. After everything had happened on it. So the LAPD detectives were able to actually go to the Splendor, which was untouched since the night of the
that's
tragedy.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they were able to go on and take a look at some of the setup and potential evidence there. So it was pretty cool.
Very interesting. So you recommend the book, Little Sister by Lana Wood? I
do, very, very much. So the next thing that I recommend, and this does shift a little bit from a really long narrative to a series of short, truly excellent, I was going to call it short stories, but it's not short stories. It's long form nonfiction writing. This book is called The Darkest Places, Unsolved Mysteries, True Crime, and Harrowing Disasters in the Wilderness. And this is from Outside Magazine.
This one's at the top of my list of all of the new projects that you describe in this edition of the Holiday Gift Guide, because I've read some of these articles in the past, and Outside Magazine's writers always do an outstanding job. Our friend Kate Miles actually has written for Outside Magazine. This looks tremendous.
It is tremendous. And I mean, it is a tome. I'm not even going to lie. It is super long.
But you can break it up into read one story and then put it aside and come back to it.
Yeah. And that's actually it's what makes it very approachable is okay, I've got time for 2 of these articles and then I'm going to go put it aside for a little bit. That's what makes it so great.
I'm going to go feed my dog or take care of the cat or live the rest of my life. Yeah,
it is truly excellent. It has a little bit of something for everyone. As it says in the title, you have unsolved mysteries. There's a jogger, for example, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances and has yet to be found, like all these years later, just like vanished into thin air without a trace. There is true crime. So think murder on the Appalachian Trail. That was one that actually made my blood run cold because I know where on the Appalachian Trail that particular murder took place. It's in a shelter on the Blue Ridge Parkway near a town that I have actually gone to before. That one kind of I was like, oh my gosh, I had never heard about that before.
Very interesting.
And then you've got just disasters like a plane crash into the side of the mountain in the Andes, I think it was. Each one of those stories was really interesting on its own. And it's also one of those stories that you have to put down your phone and Google a little bit so that you can get photos and locations and additional information. But it is all truly, truly fascinating and really wonderful writing, some of the best that I have read. So if you are a fan of not just true crime, but also just straight up weird mysteries that all happen to occur outside in the wilderness, this is the book for you. It is so wonderful. And I had a very, very hard time putting it down.
So again, strongly recommended, The Darkest Places, Unsolved Mysteries, True Crime, and Harrowing Disasters in the Wilderness from Outside Magazine. And this is in book form.
Yes. So you're going to be asking Santa Claus for that for Christmas?
Absolutely. That and a Mind Over Murder t-shirt, and I'll be good to go.
There you go. We want to give a shout out to the author of this next book because he is a friend of the podcast and he is actually a guest of ours. And we hope to have him as a guest again very soon. That is the redoubtable Ron Peterson. Ron Peterson. You may remember him from one of our very early episodes. We're talking I think, what was it? Episode number 6 or 7?
Yeah, very early on in Mind Over Murder history.
It was very early on. He wrote the book Under the Trestle, and then he later on wrote one called Chasing the Squirrel. And so he is back with Eyes of a Monster. This one it's blowing me away. It's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. This is a cold case murder that I have not heard of, but we have had a couple of listeners and readers on Colonial Parkway Murders who've reached out and said, hey, are you guys going to cover this case?
Right.
And now that we have this book, I think we're going to let Ron Peterson come on and cover it for us.
That would be great. And Ron Peterson Jr. is a wonderful writer and just a wonderful guy and a Virginia-based writer who has put out 3 books in about 3 years. I mean, he's very prolific, which is impressive.
So he took on the case of Olivia Christian. She was a beloved teacher who was murdered in her Hampton apartment in 1981. And as cases do sometimes seem to, her case went cold. But in 2011, there was an intrepid detective by the name of Randy Mayer who took a look at the case and realized there is something here that could probably help me solve this. So he enlisted the help of FBI agent Liza Ludovico and a special prosecutor by the name of Phil Figura. And they, working as a team, did everything that they could to bring Olivia Christian's killer to justice. But rather than spoil for you whether they did or did not, we're just going to say you have to read the book.
Full disclosure, I know FBI agent Liza Ludovico, and she had discussed this case with me several years ago when they were working on it because there was a possibility, a distant possibility, that Olivia Christian's death could have been related to other unsolved homicides in the Tidewater area. So there was no direct tie into the Colonial Parkway murders. Agent Ludovico did fill me in on what they were working on in the Olivia Christian case. Amazing story, and I can't wait to read the book.
He's got a wonderful style. It's very easy and approachable. He does short chapters, so if you need to read a little something, then put it down and pick it back up again, it's easy. We love everything that Ron has done, and we're looking forward to having him on Mind Over Murder to talk about Eyes of a Monster.
And you did mention Ron Peterson Jr. when we first interviewed him for Under the Trestle, his first book regarding the murder of Gina Renee Hall. That was back in episodes 8, 9, and 10 of Mind Over Murder. We don't refer to them very much by number. You know, they do have sequential numbers. Some other podcasters tend to focus a little bit more on, oh, that's in episode 108 or whatever. Those were episodes 8, 9, and 10 regarding Gina Renee Hall. You may recall her case was the first no-body conviction in the state of Virginia. Very, very interesting case.
That was early days, my friend.
I told you recently, I'm proud of the work we did, but I think we sound better and more comfortable in our co-hosting roles now than we did when we first started. It'll be 2 years ago coming up Christmas.
Gee, well, I mean, I've never been more nervous about anything in my life than the idea of putting myself out on the internet every week and leaving myself open for ridicule.
And guess what? That didn't happen. And lots of people have said... Are you sure?
You read the reviews.
Lots of people have said very nice things about your work. So here you are worrying about things that never even came to pass.
If you are interested in other books by Ron Peterson, we do encourage you to check back to those distant episodes, 8, 9, and 10 about the Gina Renee Hall case. Any book that you get by Ron is sure to be an excellent gift.
Well,
and Ron, please come back on the podcast.
Exactly. We need to get Ron back here. No question about it. You're listening to Mind Over Murder. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsors. Many of you know that Othram is leading the way in DNA testing, helping law enforcement solve missing persons, homicides, and sexual assault cases across the United States and Canada using forensic-grade DNA tests.
You can help this important cause by contributing funds and your DNA profile to Othram's free site, DNAsolves.com. The process is easy and confidential. Just 2 simple steps.
Now DNA Solves has added another new feature, DNA Solves Connect, which will allow you to upload your DNA profile to help law enforcement, even if you've never used one of the commercial genealogy sites.
If you're looking for a missing family member or have lost touch with someone, DNA Solves Connect is an incredible option at only $14.95.
Upload your DNA profile to DNAsolves.com.
Join Mind Over Murder as we help families find answers with Othram and DNAsolves.com.
We're back here at Mind Over Murder.
We also want to give a shout out to another of our true crime colleagues and friends. This is Nikki Egan, who is a truly spectacular reporter. She has 2 books, Victim F and Chasing Cosby. And she asked us specifically to give both of her books a shout out, which we are happy to do because both of them are absolutely amazing. I usually cringe at phrases like unputdownable because English teacher.
And there isn't such a word?
No, there is not. But if I had to say that something was unputdownable,
or I couldn't put it down if you wanted to phrase things in the language we all share.
Proper English teacher speak. Yeah, exactly. I would certainly characterize Victim F, which is her newest book, as unputdownable because I legitimately, really, actually, and truly could not put down Victim F until I finished it.
Well, I remember you walked me through what happens, and we won't give away the story or anything like that. But even when you described it, even though it was a true story of Denise Huskins and her boyfriend, Aaron Quinn, when you told me the story in brief, it sounded like a Hollywood thriller, like, you know, with all these twists and turns and you've got to be kidding kind of developments. And the bizarre thing is it's a true story.
It is mind-blowing. It really isn't overstating the case to say that it's mind-blowing. I got absolutely 0 things done for 6 solid hours because I picked up that book and I could not put it down until I had finished it. My eyes were blurring. I was tired, but was like, I have to finish this book. I have to finish it.
Wow.
It is the most utterly mind-blowing, but also completely infuriating case that I have ever heard, bar none.
That's saying a lot, really.
It really is. But honestly, I mean, when I was telling you all of the facts of the case, you were going, oh my gosh, that is crazy.
Yeah, it's just so many bizarre things happen to them as victims, and then the twists and turns are really something.
And we don't want to get into a summary of what actually happens, because one sentence needs another and another and another and another. And soon we've got 45 minutes on a case that, really deserves much longer than that. So we're even going to forgo summary at this point. But we do encourage you that if you want probably the most mind-blowing case that you can possibly think of, just go ahead and Google Victim F by Nikki Egan and see what you come up with. It will just completely blow your mind.
And buy this book for the holidays for yourself or your favorite true crime fan that likes true crime with a twist. You mentioned that our friends at Real Crime Profile have covered this case, and
yes,
there have been a number of other podcasts that have talked about this Victim F case.
There have been, for very good reason. I can't think of a case that is more baffling, infuriating, or crazy. So really, really enjoyed that book. And prior to Victim F, she also wrote Chasing Cosby. And I think at this point, we're all aware of Bill Cosby and the really reprehensible behavior that he perpetuated against women that he worked with for years. And the number keeps rising. I feel like you hear about one and then another and then another and then another. But for anyone unfamiliar with Bill Cosby, he was eventually convicted of drugging and sexually assaulting a vast number of women with whom he worked. And then, of course, we were really particularly angry earlier this year when he was released on a technicality.
I know. I had the privilege of meeting Nikki Egan almost by chance at CrimeCon. We just shared a table when tables were at a premium in the lobby of the hotel where you could grab a sandwich. And she was there with one of Cosby's, I'll say victims, but I know that is a word that they might push back on. One of the people that was victimized by Cosby, let's put it that way. And we ended up having a fantastic conversation, ran into each other several times over the course of CrimeCon down in Austin. I was just really impressed with both of them. They were absolutely wonderful. And Nikki's a fantastic writer, as you mentioned. So both these books, Chasing Cosby and Victim F, are or should be on your holiday shopping list.
Yes. And Chasing Cosby is the definitive book for the Cosby case. She is the journalist who really chased it down and brought it to light. So if you're looking for the definitive look at Cosby, this is the book you should go to. I feel like we probably should have put this next book right alongside Outside Magazine, because it kind of deals in this sort of in the same subject matter. This one came out in hardcover a year ago, but it was recently released in paperback. This book is called The Cold Vanish by John Billman. It really does answer the question, startlingly, how many people vanish into the wilderness in North America every year? And it's like, a lot.
More than you ever realized.
Yes. It was crazy looking at the statistics for this. It was like, what do you mean this many people disappear and are just never found? It is a crazy amount of people. The Cold Vanish focuses on one family's search for their missing son who just vanished into the Pacific Northwest. I've never been to the Pacific Northwest, by the way. Full disclosure here. I did not realize how utterly wild and dense and deep and dark those woods are. But apparently, very, very much so.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of open land in that corner of the United States. And those forests are incredibly dark and deep with a ton of hazards and wild animals from grizzly bears on down. There are a lot of ways to disappear in the Pacific Northwest and throughout the United States, for that matter.
So the book covers not just this particular case of this person who vanished, but it also covers some very interesting territory that I didn't know I was interested in until I read this book. It's all about how search and rescue actually works, which I had no knowledge of prior to reading this book. But now I think it's really one of the more fascinating things that I have ever read. You get a full array of information about how search and rescue works, how wilderness rescue works, how searching for someone who, has been missing for days or even just hours, and how much of the essence time actually is when you are dealing with a missing persons case. It is truly, truly fascinating.
I remember reading an article in Rolling Stone last year where they told the story of an older woman who was hiking the Appalachian Trail who went missing. What happened was that she was traveling with another female friend, and that woman was called away on family business or something. Because for a lot of Appalachian Trail, what they call through hikers, people that are hiking from one end to the other, from Maine to Georgia or Georgia to Maine, they were doing the Georgia to Maine route. They often have family and friends supporting them. And that was the case in this situation. The two women traveling together, and one of the women's husband was meeting them at various points along the trail to give them supplies and that sort of thing so that you don't have to carry everything in and out with you. Unfortunately, just through a bizarre set of circumstances, this woman stepped off the trail to go to the bathroom during that segment when her friend had gone on to take care of the family business. And apparently this woman's sense of direction was not one of her strong suits.
Oh, no.
And she got turned around, but only having stepped off a few dozen steps off of the Appalachian Trail, which is pretty well marked. She got turned around and then couldn't find her way back to the trail. And of course, when she didn't meet her husband, I think it was like the next day, he put out the alarm and they conducted an incredibly detailed search for her. But again, the Maine woods, just like we were talking about the Pacific Northwest, are incredibly dense. And she actually survived for a number of weeks.
Oh, wow.
She built herself a shelter, but she wasn't a trained outdoors person. She didn't know how to hunt or gather food from the forest. She sadly ultimately starved to death. She had enough time to leave notes for her husband and family. When they found her, she was still only a couple of 100 yards from the Appalachian Trail. But what had happened is when they did the grid search, the woods are so deep there that if you went one way, 10 feet in one direction or 10 feet in the other direction, you would have missed this enclosed, heavily wooded area where she had created this shelter. And even though they were looking for her for quite some time and did a really first-class job of searching for her, they were unsuccessful. And then her body was found several years later, which is now closer to the present day.
Wow.
It can and does happen.
Wow. That is crazy. For plenty of stories like that, the Cold Vanish and the Outside Magazine book that you're hoping Santa will bring you are definitely your better bet.
Well, John Billman, and his spelling is a little unusual. He's JonBillman.
Yes.
His book is The Cold Vanish.
I've got one more, and then I'm going to let you take the one about our case in particular. Actually, I kind of feel like this one is sort of a cheat on my part because it hasn't been released yet and will not be released until February of 2022. But I could not have any true crime holiday gift guide and consider it complete without a book from the masters themselves, John Douglas and Mark Olshaker. Shout out to John and Mark. Their newest, which releases in February, is called When a Killer Calls, A Haunting Story of Murder, Criminal Profiling, and Justice in a Small Town. And this is marketed as book 2 of the Cases of the FBI's original Mindhunter. So I get the feeling they're kind of branching a bit and also playing off the success of the Mindhunter TV series from Netflix.
Still think it was the best show on television, and I wish they'd bring it back. I read something the other day that they're thinking again about bringing it back.
Okay. All right.
Best show on TV.
I bet David Fincher probably was sick of getting complaints from people about why didn't you do season 3?
Maybe.
They released a book. Time is running together with the pandemic. I think it was last year, but it's entirely possible it was the year before.
Those 2 years are going to blend together, I think, forever.
Oh, Oh my gosh. Everything feels a little weird. I'm still having trouble thinking that it's 2021. There is a book that they released that is book one of the cases of the FBI's original Mindhunter. And so this is book two. And so these are cases that John Douglas worked on early in his career as a profiler at the Behavioral Analysis Unit, or Behavioral Sciences as it was called then. The summary for this it's almost too long to read. I'll do my best to kind of summarize it here super quick. I would say that pre-ordering this for the true crime lover in your life and then just like giving them a printout that says, hey, I've pre-ordered the Douglas Allshaker book for you would probably be a pretty good gift on its own.
Well, and it is coming out February 1st, which will be here before we know it.
Yes. Let me just run down this summary real quick, which is honestly, when I read it, my jaw hit the floor. What an interesting case. And it's one I'd never heard of before. I don't know about you, Bill.
No, nor had I.
This is crazy. So on May 31st, 1985, 2 days before her high school graduation, Sherry Smith was abducted from the driveway of her family home in South Carolina. Based on the crime scene and the abductor's repeated and taunting calls to the family, law enforcement quickly realized they were dealing with a sophisticated and highly dangerous criminal. A letter arrived the next day entitled Last Will and Testament, in which Sherry, knowing she was to be murdered, wrote bravely and achingly of her love for her parents, siblings, and boyfriend, saying that while they would miss her, she knew they would persevere through their faith. The abduction rocked her quiet town, triggering a massive manhunt and bringing in the FBI, which enlisted profiler John Douglas. A few days later, a phone call told the family where they could find Sherry's body. But here's the catch, the killer wasn't done. And I'm not going to read much more of that summary because I don't want to spoil it. It sounds absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really does. What a disturbing case. You know, anything that John Douglas and Mark Allshaker put out is incredibly well researched, based on John's work as a legendary FBI profiler, and they do an incredible job of storytelling. So I'm sure this is going to be outstanding.
Yeah, so even though this is not out yet, we really just couldn't resist putting this on the list because I don't know about the rest of you guys, but when I know that John and Mark have a new book coming out, I put it on my calendar. So February 1st is already on my calendar. If I don't pre-order it for myself, I will strongly suggest to my boyfriend that he pre-order it for me.
Ah, okay. Well, there you go. Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, they're all coming up.
I'm going to go ahead and hand over it to you so that you can talk about our final book on the list, which has special resonance and meaning for you.
We just wanted to mention again, our friends Blaine Pardoe and Victoria Hester wrote a book called A Special Kind of Evil, which amazingly came out 4 years ago now. And that is so far the definitive book on the Colonial Parkway murders case. Blaine and Victoria interviewed a number of people involved in this case and got access to investigators, family members, journalists, and so many people that had a part of the story to tell regarding the Colonial Parkway murders. You can get the book at Barnes & Noble, most area bookstores if you're in Virginia, and of course it's available on Amazon. The book's not perfect. It is extremely well researched and offers a lot of worthwhile insight into the case. We continue to recommend A Special Kind of Evil for those of you that want to come up to speed on the Colonial Parkway murders case.
And if you want more quotes and information from Bill Thomas is definitely throughout that book.
Well, I provided a lot of facilitation and introductions for Blaine and his daughter Victoria. You know, the writing is theirs. I just opened up a bunch of doors and kind of combed through my electronic Rolodex looking for people that I thought they could speak to. It's funny, I was cleaning out a storage area that we have in our loft above our garage, and I actually found an old school Rolodex. And that I realized, that's a word that it will probably eventually stop being used.
I know what it is, but I know my students wouldn't.
And even now, although I have a Rolodex in storage out in the garage, it's all in your phone now. As a matter of fact, I'm so habitual about it. The minute I get off the phone with someone, I go back to their phone number and add their contact information in so that the next time my phone rings, I know that it's Agent so-and-so or it's Jane Smith or whoever it is. I just find it a tremendous time saver. now you have thousands and thousands of contacts built into your phone. Then of course, you're like completely dependent on this small object you hold in your hand.
And because I know what happens when you lose your phone, because you told me about the fact that you lost your phone at one point, it ate all your contacts. And you suddenly had to go through the process of reconstructing all of that. I know that that's no fun.
Well, and I was changing service providers today, and that was a nightmare that actually stretched out over the better part of a week because we ran into some sort of glitch. And I was worried that I was going to somehow be cut off from the world.
It is a problem.
For all of an hour or two today. And then I realized, email still works. There are other ways to get a hold of me.
Yes.
It was kind of strange.
Well, and our final plug is to make sure that you buy some of our merchandise because we do have a lot of it. We have tons of things that are available from TeePublic. We definitely do encourage you, if you are a Mind Over Murder fan, to buy some merch for yourself or for your friends or for your family or really anybody who you feel would benefit from having a Mind Over Murder sweatshirt, phone case, wall hanging. I've got a tote bag that I keep taking to school and people keep saying, "You have merch? That's so cool."
They're very impressed. Now, are you using a Mind Over Murder coffee mug yet?
I don't drink coffee.
Oh, you can drink other things. You can drink other things.
Yes, that is true. I guess I could have my iced tea out of a Mind Over Murder coffee mug.
You could, and you could kind of, show everybody your true colors.
I'd actually like, a tumbler or something like that. And we'll have to figure out if we can get somebody to do like a stainless steel tumbler.
We'll look into that.
Something like that.
But we do have a lot of great stuff, and we have laptop covers, cell phone covers, all sorts of great stuff. And then, of course, T-shirts, sweatshirts, onesies for the little crime fighters among us, which I'm afraid my son Chris is 24 and a little out of that demographic by now. But for those of us who are having young families, there you go. What could be cuter than a little kid wearing a Mind Over Murder onesie?
Big blue fingerprint. And we did also want to give a shout out to our fellow podcasters, Rebekah Sebastian of Die-Alogue and Josh Hallmark of True Crime Bullshit. They also have merch that they are looking to sell for the holidays, and they are being good enough to plug our merchandise. So we are returning the favor and plugging theirs.
Right.
So Rebekah and Josh, thank you guys for plugging our merchandise and our holiday gift guide. We do encourage everybody who is looking for another true crime podcast, branch out to Die-Alogue and True Crime Bullshit. They are both excellent podcasts, and Rebekah and Josh are amazing people. They have some fabulous merch.
They do indeed. And I guess the most important thing at this time of year, we're heading into Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas. What else? Have I forgotten anything?
I'm sure there are a lot of them, but I can't think of what else. You hit the major ones.
Yeah. The most important thing, in all seriousness, is to find some time to be thankful for all the wonderful things in our lives and hopefully get a chance to spend some time with family. I know the last couple of years for my family, Zoom has actually ended up being a great way to communicate with families scattered across the country and not always able to travel. We actually have had some really fun Zoom sort of conference calls, video calls on Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve and that sort of thing. And I wouldn't say it's quite as joyous as it would be if we were all together in the same place. But we hope that you're able to see friends and family and enjoy some relaxing time and remind yourselves of all the things that are good about our lives.
And we are thankful for all of you, dear listeners, for sticking with us over 117 episodes or something like that. We're really, really starting to get up there. I'm impressed with us. Thank you for your reviews, your ratings, your kind comments, your requests for material. We really just appreciate that you're taking the time to continue to hang out with us and let us provide you with true crime entertainment.
We can't call it true crime bullshit because
it's not true crime bullshit.
That belongs to our friend Josh.
Yeah. But we really do appreciate that you have allowed us into your life in this way. So thank you very much for listening and being so positive and upbeat. You guys are wonderful.
I think we're ready to wrap.
That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Mind Over Murder. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Mind Over Murder is a production of Absolute Zero and Another Dog Productions.
Our executive producers are Bill Thomas and Kristin Dilley.
Our logo art is by Pamela Arnois.
Our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod.
Mind Over Murder is distributed in partnership with Crawl Space Media.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
You can also follow our page on the Colonial Parkway Murders on Facebook.
And finally, you can follow Bill Thomas on Twitter at BillThomas56.
Thank you for listening to Mind Over Murder.